My name's Santy. I look out and recognize a lot of you, but I'm sitting here coming to you today from a slightly different position than I have previously. I've been at the department since 2005, and all of that time up until last September was spent within the Office of Planning, Evaluation, and Policy Development, building and crafting something called EdFacts, where we were collecting in a consolidated fashion data across all the major formula grant programs in K-12 and working with state education agencies. So I'm still doing that, but we've moved EdFacts, and we moved it as part of a reorganization of the National Center for Education Statistics that went into place last September. So what happened was that we were organizing NCES around sources of information. If you were at all familiar with any of the programs and research areas of NCES, it really focused upon content areas. There was an elementary and secondary research area. There was a post-secondary research area. But different studies would be happening in all different places. And what our previous commissioner, Jack Buckley, was really focused upon was that the source of information matters sometimes just as much, if not more, than the content of that information. So what we have now are 3 divisions within NCES. There's an assessments division, and that's running NAEP and U.S. participation in TIMSS and PISA, any place where we are part of the administration of an assessment and then gaining research study outcomes and other things from that assessment, from the results. There's a sample and longitudinal surveys division, early ECLSK and high school longitudinal studies, a number of pure research studies, samples, surveys that have been done for years by NCES that have put out great, meaningful publications that sometimes take 5 years, 10 years of following a group of kids. The new division, the new branch is my division, the Administrative Data Division. And we brought EdFacts over so that we could really finish what we started a number of years ago within the elementary and secondary branch, which is combining EdFacts and the Common Core of data. And they've been coordinated, they've been a joined work team for a number of years, but now they're actually one branch. And we're going to keep putting that together. In addition, there's a post-secondary group, and that's primarily focused upon the iPads collection. And there is the Statewide Longitudinal Data System grant group, which is focused upon this grant program and common education data standards. And so we've really centralized the administrative collections across the entire department within that main area. How does that set of data go to inform organizational performance assessments within the department? How do we help make sure that we've got for not just large-scale formula annual performance reports, but smaller discretionary programs can leverage that larger set of data. So inside the department, we're really trying to make sure we have one group focused around sharing collection best practices. What does it mean to get a set of administrative data, these aggregated statistics, whether it's from a local education agency, a state education agency, a higher education institution, some other part of the state government that might be running an early childhood program if it's not inside the state education agency. Those places where we're dependent upon data other people are moving around. Eric spoke about skills, and Libby spoke about early childhood and helping kids those first 5 years, and you all are managing a huge mountain of information as a result of that. And we don't need to collect all the pieces of that mountain, but we do need to know what your mountain of data is saying about the programs. And that's really what the Administrative Data Division is trying to bring some consolidated best practices to. So around that, we have to make sure we're doing everything we can to help with that mountain of data, with that world, because we know that it is increasingly more and more important to more and more people. All of you know this because you all work in data, and some of you may have worked in data longer than others, but it is Pandora's last and final box. I mean, somebody new gets in and starts to realize what they can learn out of the data. All they want are more answers, and they want them faster. And suddenly you're not just talking with one person higher up the chain in your bureaucracy. Suddenly the person all the way at the top is asking more questions and getting more detailed and wanting more things. And so the amount of evolution that we've seen through the stories that you all have told and the models that you've shared at the SLDS Best Practice Conferences over the years just continues to evolve and show what's happening as more and more people understand what they can do with a real and meaningful set of data. So we want to, of course, make sure we're continuing a good set of grant management practices around all the existing grants. We're also hoping and planning to be able to do more grants. I mean, the program continues to be well supported in the President's budget. We don't know exactly upon what cycle we'd be doing another grant award because we know we can't do it with money already finalized, meaning up through fiscal year 14. We're going to need to see what happens in fiscal 15. We're going to need to let those budget conversations clarify before we know exactly where we could go with the grant round. What types of things might be interesting to us in a grant round? Well, you're hearing about labor and you're hearing about early childhood, and you're also, I'm sure, hearing other things like equity agendas and college and career readiness, and there's a whole set of new assessments getting ready to roll out that people are field testing right now. So there's a lot of things that we know need support, and we absolutely want to and need to continue the grant program that can do that. We've also put a huge focus in the past few years around the Common Education Data Standards, and that's not going to stop, and that's going to continue. What we really want to focus on is helping people use those common data standards. How do they help a local school district? Do they make sense, and can a set of teachers do something because they're thinking about a core piece of knowledge through the data standards in a way that allows them to connect what they're looking for with something in a neighboring district or even a neighboring state? You know, how can we find those models and how can we build those conversations? Groups like the National Forum for Education Statistics are helping with that. We unfortunately couldn't have a winter meeting of that group. We are going to have a summer meeting of that group, and we're going to keep those conversations going. And we want to figure out, you know, what does it really mean to use it? There's been a great question about what does it mean to adopt Common Education Data Standards. And for us inside the Administrative Data Division, adopting the data standards is really meaning taking those aggregated statistics that we've been collecting, sometimes for years, breaking them down into the pieces, the component data that needs to be present. If you out in the field were going to answer our collection using a student-level data system, what do we think you would need to use? What are the core elemental pieces of data in your student-level or teacher-level system you would need to use to give us a set of comparable and meaningful and accurate statistics? And we want to keep expressing our data requirements utilizing the standards. We also know there's a set of content development that's not done within the standards. I don't know that the standards will ever be done. We have to figure out a right way to govern them. But the last 4 years have really been about version 1 led to version 2, which brought in more things. Version 2 led to version 3, which really tried to pull in even more. 3 led to 4. 4 to 5 probably isn't going to be that big of a change, but we know there's more in early childhood. That stakeholder group is really just getting rolling with a lot of things that they've been wrestling with. And we need to support that. We need to keep allowing that group to come together and think about all the data that are needed to understand what's happening in the early childhood space out in the field so that we can build a better platform for that data through the data standards. We have a set of online tools that I know most of you have seen at least one presentation on. The Connect tool and the Align tool and the ways in which you can use some new features and functionality to cut across those two things so that if you have an alignment map, you've taken your statewide data system and mapped it to the data standards and put that alignment map in, and you're looking at a use case in the Connect tool, something you know you're not doing but you think is really interesting. You could take that connection and align it right on top of your alignment map and see, do I have the necessary elements to do this use case, to run my data through this use case that this person has described through the Connect tool. That's how we're starting to think about our aggregate statistics, whether they're in iPads, whether they're in EdFacts, CCD, whether they're part of the civil rights data collection. The things that we know cause a work burden on you guys to put them together, or someone in your group, if it's not any of you sitting here, but I know from faces it's at least some of you, to put it together and bring it to us. So the issues and the policy areas that we know are going to be getting more and more focus and discussion. As I said, school-to-school equity. What does it mean to have equitable educational opportunities in every school, across a district, across a state, across the country? That's of critical importance to Secretary Duncan. How do you measure that? That's an open question that we're going to have a lot of conversation about in the next year as a nation. Right? The data systems absolutely have to help inform that conversation. Because it's great to come up with an idea of a great way to measure equity, but if it takes a brand new way of conceptualizing and organizing the data, there's probably a 5 to 10 year on-ramp to get real meaningful data in that area. There may be other things that we could leverage from what you're already moving and already managing in your data systems that might help us understand a picture clearer and sooner than that. Early childhood, college and career readiness, the new assessments, mentioned all of these. What we're really trying to do across our administrative data division is to make sure our collected data are more accessible, both inside the department, so that if Libby, working in the early childhood area, is to learn something about another program area, we can help her understand what data are available from that program area, where it may or may not connect back. If Department of Labor needs something, wants to understand something about reading or math proficiency, well, what do we have at the national level that may or may not inform the skills conversation that they're needing to take forward? And we know that there's a deeper set of data out in the field. And that's really our key. As we think about consolidating our data collection, there was a memo released by the Office of Management and Budget last month that all agencies need to respond to, looking at statistical uses of administrative data systems. So we immediately start thinking about things like the National Student Loan Data System that Federal Student Aid runs, or wage record information, or unemployment insurance information. You can't just go in and mine person identifiable information if you're not the group managing that set of information. But there may be summarizations of that data that we could put to better use. There may be ways of doing that. That's what OMB is pushing us on. And we're going to be a key part of that, thinking about what sets of information already exist out there that might be leveraged and used differently. I always think about it, and it kind of breaks down in two different ways. There's really actionable data. If you're a teacher, your actionable data has to do with your kids right now. What happens with them this week, this day, what's going on? And early childhood skills conversations of developing the labor force, the people out in the country doing this are utilizing and having to utilize to a greater level of importance that actionable data. As Libby mentioned, you don't see turnaround models that aren't built on actionable data. We're not collecting the actionable data, but we are hoping to collect what I'm going to call relevant data. And I hope it comes from those actionable data, those things that mean a lot to teachers, superintendents, principals. How do we make sure the things that we need in an aggregate statistic actually are coming from the same place? So if there's not actionable data that I care about as a teacher or a principal, oh yeah, then there's that other stuff over there that we throw over the transom and it makes its way up to the federal government. And I know that's probably closer to the reality in a lot of places, and that's what we want to move away from. And that's what we hope by connecting IPEDS, CCD, and IFAC's statewide data systems, we can get into one division all the people to have the conversations we need to keep not just consolidating our data collection, but really harmonizing it down to something that gives us what we need to have the relevant statistics that we know means something to those policy items, to those program areas, and are still actually connected back through the chain of data across the country to the actionable data teachers and principals and program managers need on a daily basis. So that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to turn it back over to Nancy and open it up for questions.
I'm just going to open it up for questions.